My son texted me. You weren't invited to dinner. My wife doesn't want you there. But I am Lynn, 62 years old, a retired nurse and a single mom. For 35 years, I poured my heart into raising my son James while working at the hospital. We were always so close, like best friends. Yesterday, I received a text from him that shattered my world. You weren't invited to dinner? My wife doesn't want you there. This after I had paid for their beautiful new house. What hurt more was remembering how I had sacrificed everything for him. Let me tell you what happened. If you are watching this, please let me know where you are from and hit that like and subscribe button to join our community of sharing life experiences. I became a single mother when James was just 4 years old. His father decided family life wasn't for him and walked out without looking back. I was devastated, but knew I had to be strong for my little boy. Those early years were tough, working double shifts at the hospital, attending nursing school at night, and making sure James never felt the absence of his father too deeply. We lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of town. It wasn't much, but I made it cozy. I remember how James would wait up for me no matter how late my shift ended. He would be sitting on our worn couch, trying to fight sleep just so he could tell me about his day at school. Those moments, despite my exhaustion, were precious. I took extra certification courses to increase my salary. There were nights I studied until dawn, only to get up 2 hours later for my morning shift. But seeing James flourish made it all worthwhile. He was such a bright child, curious, kind, and surprisingly mature for his age. By the time he was in middle school, he was helping around the apartment making simple meals and even reminding me to take breaks when I pushed myself too hard. High school came with its challenges. James went through a brief rebellious phase, testing boundaries as teenagers do. But unlike many single parents with teens, our relationship remained solid. He confided in me about crushes, friendships, and his dreams for the future. I attended every soccer game, every academic competition, and volunteered at school events despite my exhausting schedule. The proudest day of my life was when James received his acceptance letter from Stanford University. We both cried, knowing all our sacrifices had paid off. I had been saving since his birth for college, but it still meant taking out additional loans. I never told him how I postponed my own retirement plans to ensure he graduated debt-free. James thrived in college, studying computer science and business. He called me every Sunday without fail, telling me about his class's professors and new friends. During his junior year, these calls started featuring stories about a girl named Stephanie. The way he described her, brilliant, ambitious, from a wealthy Connecticut family, I could tell he was falling in love. When they graduated, James brought Stephanie home to meet me. She was beautiful, polished, and initially very charming. I welcomed her with open arms, cooking all of James's favorite dishes and showing her his childhood photos. She seemed interested in our stories and complimented my modest home. I thought I had gained a daughter. Their wedding was elaborate, held at Stephanie's parents' country club. Though her family covered most expenses, I contributed significantly, wanting to give my son the perfect day. I spent almost $20,000, money from my retirement fund, but seeing James so happy made it worthwhile. During his toast, he thanked me for being both mother and father to him, bringing tears to everyone's eyes. After the wedding, James landed an excellent position at a tech company in Boston. I was so proud watching him build his career, especially when they announced they were looking to buy their first home. Little did I know that this would mark the beginning of changes in our relationship, subtle at first, but increasingly apparent as Stephanie's true colors began to show. The first sign of trouble came 6 months after the wedding. James and Stephanie invited me to their rented condo for dinner. I brought a housewarming gift, a handmade quilt I had spent months creating. Stephanie barely acknowledged it, setting it aside with a tight smile. Throughout dinner, she corrected James several times, giving him looks when he talked too much about our family traditions or childhood memories. My calls to James gradually went from daily to weekly, then bi-weekly. Often, Stephanie would answer his phone saying he was busy and would call back, but he rarely did. When we did speak, I could sense someone listening to our conversations. James sounded different, measured in his words, as if following a script. For their first Thanksgiving, as a married couple, I invited them to my home. Stephanie immediately declined, saying they had already committed to spending it with her family. The same happened at Christmas and then Easter. I began to notice a pattern. All holidays were spent with her family, never with me. I tried to build a relationship with Stephanie independent of James. I invited her for lunch, asked about her interests, and even researched topics she might enjoy discussing. I learned she liked specific designers, so I saved up to buy her a Coach purse for her birthday. When she opened it, she said, "This is last season's style," and set it aside without thanks. During one visit to their apartment, I offered to help clean up after dinner. Stephanie snapped, "We don't need your help. Our housekeeper comes tomorrow." I stepped back hurt, but trying not to show it. That same visit, I overheard her on the phone with her mother, saying, "James's mom is here again, being so clingy. I don't know how much more I can take." My heart broke, but I said nothing to James. I didn't want to come between them or make him choose. Perhaps most painful was watching James change. My confident, warm son became quiet around Stephanie, always looking to her before speaking, laughing less, calling me less. At a family gathering hosted by mutual friends, I brought homemade apple pie, James's favorite since childhood. Stephanie loudly announced she had ordered gourmet desserts because some people still think homemade is charming. Several guests looked uncomfortable, but James said nothing in my defense. Despite these slights, I kept trying. I sent cards, left supportive voicemails, and respected their boundaries even as they became more restrictive. When James mentioned they were struggling to find a babysitter for their dog when they traveled, I offered to help. Stephanie replied, "We prefer professional care for Bentley." It was clear. I wasn't welcome in their lives, except on her terms. The most revealing moment came at James's 31st birthday party. I arrived early to help set up bringing childhood photos James had once asked me to digitize. Stephanie intercepted me at the door, taking the album and saying, "This isn't really the vibe we're going for tonight." Later, I found the album tucked under a stack of magazines unopened. Throughout all this, I maintained my dignity. I never complained to James, never criticized Stephanie to anyone, and kept showing up with love, despite the growing pain. I believed that eventually Stephanie would see I only wanted to be a positive presence in their lives. I was wrong. About 2 years into their marriage, James called me with exciting news. They were looking to buy a house. Property in their desired Boston suburb was expensive, and despite their good salaries, the down payment required was substantial. James hesitantly explained they were struggling to qualify for the mortgage they wanted. "The house is perfect, Mom," he said, excitement in his voice for the first time in months. 4 bedrooms, a beautiful yard, in an excellent school district for when we have kids. He described the craftsman-style home with its original woodwork updated kitchen and sunny rooms. I could hear genuine passion in his voice. When he mentioned the price, $850,000, I understood their dilemma. Even with their combined income, the 20% down payment plus closing costs would deplete their savings completely, and they might still not qualify for the loan they needed. I had been saving for retirement since my 30s, living frugally while ensuring James had everything he needed. Now, at 61, I had a decent nest egg that would allow me to live comfortably through my golden years. Without hesitation, I offered to help. "I can provide the down payment," I told him, "and contribute to the monthly mortgage payments until you get established." There was silence on the other end of the line, then muffled voices, James discussing with Stephanie. When he returned to the call, he sounded both relieved and uncomfortable. "That would be amazing, Mom, but we can't accept such a large gift." "It's not entirely a gift," I clarified. "Think of it as an investment in my future grandchildren's home. We can draw up an agreement about repayment terms if that makes you both more comfortable." After several more discussions, including one tense video call with Stephanie present, we reached an agreement. I would provide $170,000 for the down payment and contribute to their monthly mortgage payments for the first 3 years through automatic transfers. In return, there was a simple repayment plan that would begin after those 3 years. I met with my financial advisor who cautioned me about the arrangement. "This will significantly impact your retirement security," she warned. I knew she was right, but also knew I would do anything for James. We formalized the agreement with proper documentation, though I told James I trusted him implicitly. The day they closed on the house, James called me genuinely grateful. "We couldn't have done this without you, Mom. You've always been there for me." Those words meant everything. Stephanie got on the call briefly thanking me with what seemed like sincere appreciation. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful about our relationship. I set up automatic payments from my account, 170 separate transfers scheduled over 3 years. Each payment confirmation arrived in my email, which I dutifully saved in a special folder. I took pride in watching the balance decrease, knowing I was helping my son and his wife build their future. They moved in that spring, and I sent them housewarming gifts, quality kitchen appliances, luxurious bedding gift cards to home improvement stores. Stephanie actually called to thank me, her voice warmer than I had heard in years. I allowed myself to believe things were changing for the better. I expected an invitation to see the new home once they settled in. Weeks passed, then months. Each time I gently inquired about visiting, there was always a reason to postpone. Renovations underway, Stephanie's parents visiting work commitments, or simply, now's not a good time. Still, I continued making those payments faithfully, each one a testament to my love for my son and my hope for our future relationship. Little did I know how drastically things would change, or that those 170 receipts would eventually become evidence of my own naivety. 6 months after James and Stephanie moved into their new home, I began hearing through mutual friends about gatherings at their house. Sarah, my former colleague, whose daughter was friends with Stephanie, mentioned a lovely housewarming party they had attended. "The house is absolutely beautiful," Sarah told me over coffee. "You must be so proud of them." When I admitted I hadn't yet been invited to see it, her expression shifted to discomfort. "Oh, I assumed there were quite a few people there." That evening, I called James. "I heard you had a housewarming party," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "It wasn't really a party," he replied quickly. "Just a few of Stephanie's work friends stopping by. Very informal." But social media told a different story. Though neither James nor Stephanie had me as a connection on their accounts, Sarah's daughter had posted photos. A catered event with at least 30 guests, including Stephanie's parents, who had apparently flown in for the occasion. I swallowed my hurt and tried again the following month. "I'd love to see the house, James. Maybe I could drive up this weekend." "This weekend isn't good," came the reply. "Stephanie's redecorating the guest room." The excuses continued. They were too busy having work done going out of town. Meanwhile, I learned Stephanie's parents had visited multiple times, staying for extended periods. One mutual acquaintance innocently mentioned how Stephanie's mother had practically moved in to help with the landscaping project. In October, I made another attempt. "I could come for just a day trip, James. I won't need to stay over." "Let me check with Stephanie," he said. The next day came his text. "Stephanie thinks it would be better to wait until the holidays when the house is decorated." But when Thanksgiving approached, they announced they would be spending it with Stephanie's family in Connecticut. Christmas brought the same outcome. I spent both holidays alone, sending gifts that were acknowledged with brief generic thank you texts. In January, I received a promotion at the hospital to director of nursing. It was a significant achievement after 35 years of service. I called James with the news, hoping he would be proud. "That's great, Mom," he said, sounding distracted. I could hear Stephanie in the background asking who was calling. The conversation ended quickly with his promise to call back soon, a promise that went unfulfilled. My birthday in March passed without a card or call from my son. When I finally reached him the following day, he apologized profusely. "Work has been crazy, Mom. Stephanie and I both have big projects due. Too busy even for a text," I asked, unable to hide my hurt. "I'm sorry," he repeated, then added something that chilled me. "Stephanie thinks I rely on you too much emotionally. She says I need to establish more independence." I was stunned. "You're 32 years old, James. You've been independent since college." "That's not how Stephanie sees it," he replied, his voice strange and distant. "She thinks our relationship is unhealthy." After that conversation, our already limited communication became even more restricted. Meanwhile, the mortgage payments continued to leave my account like clockwork, each one a painful reminder of the growing distance between us. The final blow came entirely by accident. I was visiting friends who lived in the same suburb as James and Stephanie. After dinner, my friend Alice offered to drive me past their house, just to see it from outside. I agreed, feeling both excited and apprehensive. As we slowly drove by, I saw lights on inside and several cars in the driveway. Through the large front windows, I could clearly see people gathered in what appeared to be a dinner party. I recognized Stephanie's parents and what looked like other family members. "Would you like to stop?" Alice asked, noticing my expression. "No," I said quietly. "Let's go." As we pulled away, I overheard through the open car window Stephanie's clear voice saying to someone, "We're finally creating boundaries. James agrees his mother was too involved in his life." The tears I shed that night were not just for being excluded from their home, a home I was helping to pay for, but for the realization that my son was allowing his wife to rewrite our history and push me from his life. April 16th was always a significant date for James and me. It was the anniversary of his grandfather's death. My father, who had been more of a father figure to James than his own dad ever was. Every year since his passing, James and I had shared a quiet dinner together, reminiscing about Grandpa Joe and the profound impact he had on both our lives. Grandpa Joe had been our rock during the difficult years after James's father left. He taught James to fish, helped him with science projects, and attended every school event. When James graduated high school as valedictorian, he dedicated half his speech to his grandfather's influence. When Grandpa Joe passed suddenly from a heart attack, 14-year-old James was devastated. Creating our annual dinner tradition had been James's idea, a way to honor the man who had stepped in when his own father stepped out. So, on April 15th, I texted James as I always did. "Dinner tomorrow for Grandpa Joe's anniversary. I could drive up or we could meet halfway." I waited anxiously for his response, hoping this tradition might be the one thing Stephanie couldn't take away. Hours passed before my phone finally pinged with his reply, words that stopped my heart. "You weren't invited to dinner. My wife doesn't want you there." I read the message repeatedly, unable to process the cruelty. This wasn't about a random social gathering or casual get-together. This was our sacred tradition honoring a man who had been central to both our lives. My hands shook as I typed the only response I could manage. "Okay." That simple word contained oceans of pain. I set my phone down and sat motionless in my living room, surrounded by photos of James growing up of my father, with his arm around his grandson, of happier times that now seemed like they belonged to someone else's life. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had experienced. Not only was I being excluded from a meaningful family tradition, but my son had delivered the rejection with such callousness, clearly using Stephanie's wishes as the justification. There was no apology, no recognition of what this tradition meant, no acknowledgement of my feelings. I thought about the 16 years of April 16th dinners we had shared. The first year after Grandpa Joe died, when we both cried through the entire meal at his favorite steakhouse. The year James was in college when he drove 4 hours each way, just to maintain our tradition. The time he was sick with the flu but insisted we still have our dinner wearing masks as we ate soup in my apartment. Now, with 6 words, that tradition was erased. And those 6 words revealed an uglier truth. My son had chosen his wife's apparent dislike of me over our shared history and bond. I spent that night sorting through old photo albums, reading cards James had given me over the years. To the best mom in the world, thanks for always being there. I wouldn't be who I am without you. Empty words now. As dawn broke exhausted from a sleepless night of grief, I made myself a cup of coffee and faced the brutal reality. I had given everything to my son. My youth, my energy, my savings, my heart. In return, he had discarded me at his wife's request. And I was still paying for the house I wasn't welcome to enter, where they were now excluding me from our most meaningful family tradition. Something inside me hardened. The pain didn't lessen, but alongside it grew a resolve I hadn't felt in years. I would not continue to finance my own rejection. I would not keep giving to those who saw me as nothing more than a bank account. Most importantly, I would not allow my son and his wife to devalue decades of love and sacrifice. That text message, "You weren't invited to dinner, my wife doesn't want you there," would prove to be the breaking point that forced me to finally put myself first after a lifetime of putting my son above all else. The morning after receiving James's devastating text, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, a strange calm replacing the night's anguish. First, I logged into my online banking account and navigated to the automatic payment section. There they were, 170 scheduled payments stretching into the future, each one representing my sacrifice for a son who had just broken my heart. With 3 decisive clicks, I canceled all future payments. A warning message appeared. "Are you sure you want to cancel these scheduled transactions?" Never had I been more certain of anything. I clicked confirm. Next, I opened my email and found the folder containing all the payment receipts I had dutifully saved. One by one, I deleted them, keeping only a single screenshot of the folder, showing the 170 separate transactions as evidence of what I had already contributed. My third step was contacting the lawyer who had helped draft our financial agreement. "I need to formally terminate the arrangement," I told her, my voice steady. She expressed concern, asking if I was certain. "James and Stephanie have made it clear I'm not welcome in their lives," I explained. "I see no reason to continue funding a home I'm not permitted to visit." She promised to draw up the necessary documentation and advised me on next steps. "They may contest this," she warned. "The agreement does have provisions for early termination, but they could argue you're breaching contract." "Let them," I replied. "I have evidence of their behavior. I'm prepared to defend my decision." By noon, I had sent a formal email to both James and Stephanie informing them clinically that all financial support would cease immediately per Section 7.2 of our agreement, which covered significant changes in familial relationship status. I attached the termination documents requiring their signatures and concluded with, "Please direct any questions to my attorney whose contact information is included." I turned off my phone and took myself to lunch at my favorite cafe. For the first time in years, I ordered whatever I wanted without calculating the cost or thinking about saving that money for James's future. I even ordered dessert. When I returned home and turned my phone back on 3 hours later, it exploded with notifications. 12 missed calls from James. 8 from Stephanie. 23 text messages ranging from confusion to anger to pleading. James: "Mom, what's going on?" "There must be a mistake with the bank." Stephanie: "You can't do this. We have a legal agreement." James: "Please call me back. This isn't funny." Stephanie: "Your behavior is completely unprofessional and vindictive." James: "Mom, please, the mortgage payment is due next week. Stephanie. My father's attorney will be contacting you. The messages grew increasingly desperate as the hours passed. James. Mom, I'm sorry about the dinner thing. Stephanie was just having a bad day. Stephanie. We invite you to dinner all the time and you're being dramatic. James. We need this money. We budgeted based on your commitment. Stephanie. You're trying to ruin our marriage. This was your plan all along. The final message from James cut deepest. I never thought you'd use money to manipulate us. I guess financial support had strings attached after all. I didn't respond to any of the messages or return any calls. Instead, I wrote a single email to both of them. The only string attached to my financial support was basic human respect and inclusion in my son's life. When you explicitly uninvited me from a meaningful family tradition because my wife doesn't want you there, you severed that string yourselves. The next day, the calls continued. Then Stephanie's parents called. Even their real estate agent reached out asking if we could work something out. I maintained my silence, directing all inquiries to my attorney. 3 days after my decision, a certified letter arrived from Stephanie's father's law firm threatening legal action for breach of contract and emotional distress. My attorney assured me it was mostly bluster. Our agreement was solid with clear provisions for termination. On day 5, flowers arrived at my door with a card from James. I'm so sorry. Please talk to me. I donated the flowers to the hospital where I worked. A week after the initial text that had broken my heart, a handwritten letter arrived from James. The envelope was tear-stained, the handwriting shaky. So different from the cold, dismissive text he had sent before. I made myself a cup of tea before opening it, preparing for whatever manipulation might be inside. Instead, I found what appeared to be genuine remorse. James wrote about how he had allowed Stephanie to come between us, how he had failed to stand up for our relationship, how deeply he regretted the pain he had caused. He acknowledged the sacrifices I had made throughout his life and expressed shame at having taken my generosity for granted. The house doesn't matter, he wrote. No property is worth losing my mother. Please give me a chance to make this right. I read the letter 3 times, searching for insincerity or hidden agenda. Finding none, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not from pain this time, but from the first glimmer of hope that perhaps my son wasn't entirely lost to me. After a week of reflection, I texted James, suggesting we meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. Just you, I specified. I'm not ready to see Stephanie. He agreed immediately. When I arrived at the small cafe the following Saturday, James was already there, looking haggard with dark circles under his eyes. He stood when he saw me, his expression a mixture of hope and fear. Mom, he said simply, his voice breaking on that single syllable. I didn't rush to embrace him as I might have done before. Instead, I took a seat across from him and waited. He needed to do the talking. I don't know where to begin, he admitted, hands wrapped around his untouched coffee mug. I've been a terrible son. Yes, I agreed quietly. You have. His eyes filled with tears at my honesty. I let Stephanie dictate my relationship with you. At first, it was small things, spending holidays with her family instead of dividing our time fairly. Then it became criticizing how often we talked, suggesting you were too dependent on me. Before I realized what was happening, she was screening my calls with you and editing my messages. Why? I asked. What made her so threatened by me? James sighed deeply. She comes from a controlling family. Her parents micromanaged every aspect of her life, and I think she saw our close relationship as similar. She was determined not to have an involved mother-in-law. That doesn't excuse your choices, I pointed out. You're an adult, James. You allowed this to happen. He nodded, accepting the responsibility. You're right. I chose the path of least resistance. It was easier to give in to Stephanie than to confront the conflict. Each time I did, the pattern reinforced itself until I couldn't see how wrong it was. We talked for 3 hours. James revealed how the house situation had deteriorated in the past week. They had been forced to take out a high-interest emergency loan to cover the mortgage payment. Stephanie's parents had refused to help, calling it a problem of their own making. Their marriage was under severe strain, with Stephanie blaming James for not handling me better. "I'm not telling you this for sympathy," he clarified. "We created this situation and we'll figure it out. I just want you to know that this has forced me to reevaluate everything: my marriage, my priorities, who I've become." "What about our dinner tradition?" I asked, coming to the heart of what had triggered everything. James looked ashamed. Stephanie knew what that day meant to us. She deliberately planned a dinner with her friends on the same night. When I mentioned our tradition, she became angry, saying I always put you first. She demanded I text you that you weren't welcome. I should have refused. "But you didn't," I said softly. "No," he acknowledged. "I didn't, and I will regret that decision for the rest of my life." As our conversation drew to a close, I shared my own journey over the past difficult week. "I've realized I need to rebuild my life beyond just being your mother. For too long, I've defined myself primarily through my relationship with you. When that relationship became toxic, I had nothing else to hold on to." "What does that mean for us?" he asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. "It means I'm open to healing our relationship, but on new terms," I explained. "I won't be financing your house anymore. That chapter is closed. I need to secure my own future now, and I won't be subjecting myself to Stephanie's cruelty again." "She wants to apologize too," James offered quickly. "I'm not ready for that," I said firmly. "Perhaps someday, but not now. My boundary is that I'll rebuild with you separately from her, at least initially." James nodded slowly. "I understand. Can I call you tomorrow?" "Yes," I agreed. "But James, understand this. My love for you has never wavered, but my tolerance for disrespect has ended. I expect honesty, consideration, and reciprocity going forward. This is your one chance to rebuild what we had." As we parted, he hugged me tightly. I allowed myself to embrace him back, feeling both the familiar love I'd always had for my son and the new strength I'd discovered in standing up for myself. In the months that followed, James and I slowly rebuilt our relationship through weekly phone calls and occasional lunches. True to my word, I maintained distance from Stephanie, though James reported they were in marriage counseling, addressing the control issues in their relationship. Their financial situation remained strained. They ultimately sold the house I had helped them buy, moving to a smaller, more affordable condominium. James took a second job temporarily to manage the transition. Though difficult, he later told me it was necessary penance and had actually strengthened his character. As for me, I focused on building a richer life for myself. I joined a travel group for women over 50, taking my first trip to Italy, something I had dreamed of since college. I volunteered at a literacy program teaching adults to read. I renovated my small apartment, making it truly mine rather than a shrine to James's childhood. I made new friends who knew me as Lynn, not just as James's mom. I dated occasionally, enjoying male companionship without pressure for serious commitment. For the first time in decades, I put my own happiness first. A year after that fateful text message, James and I celebrated Grandpa Joe's memory together at his favorite restaurant. It was bittersweet, but healing. Stephanie wasn't there honoring my boundaries, but James said she had encouraged him to go. The greatest lesson I learned through this painful journey was that love without respect isn't truly love at all. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships. I had given everything to my son, including financial security meant for my retirement. But in doing so, I had inadvertently taught him that I deserved less than basic respect. True love, I discovered, sometimes means walking away until proper treatment is restored. It means valuing yourself enough to demand reciprocity. It means recognizing when sacrifice becomes self-destruction. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with James and Stephanie. What I do know is that I'll never again allow anyone to make me feel unwelcome or unworthy, not even my beloved son. And in that certainty, I found a peace I never knew was possible. I wonder, have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? What happened when you finally stood up for yourself? Please share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and self-discovery. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to teach others how to treat you with the dignity you deserve.